With all the death, destruction, hatred, fear, and chaos running rampant, where does love fit into the equation? It seems like love is the only thing we have to work with. One could say hope is something else we have to work with, but hope is just love with an added attachment to it. It's attached to a story that's inhibiting love. This hope that exists is a hope that things will be better. Things will get better. People will be better. How? Better as in things changing from destruction to love. Now we're back to love. So what is it? How does it work? How has it been manipulated to work against us? Where does it fit in the world of death and destruction? A world of death and destruction can only exist when it's filled with people who are in a death and destruction ridden relationship with themselves. So how does something like that happen? Not knowing yourself, your history, your purpose, living with someone else's purpose, mind control. This is how this happens. Because a lack of knowledge of yourself has to happen for a reason. You have to be taught how to not know yourself. If you lived naturally in a world not bombarded by forcing you to strive just to survive, if you didn't have to deal with all of that, you would not have difficulty with knowing yourself. This is why in previous generations, when our ancestors were living in more harmonious cultures, systems, not saying it was perfect, but they had a balance, a connection, a relationship, systems that were not built on lack, survival, struggle, poverty, death, destruction. When they lived like that, they had more of a capacity to know themselves, to love themselves. They were not bogged down by the mind control that separates them from themselves. When you know yourself, you can build upon that foundation. And that energy is not being lost. That knowledge, that love, that focus, it's not being taxed. It's not being split up and siphoned off into other systems or people. Its energy is created by you and distributed by you. But we don't have that today. We have been faced by a group of people who have difficulty with loving themselves, with knowing themselves, with generating that energy. In that same storyline, there are groups of people, there are factions within this mind control system who do know themselves. They know themselves to such a degree that their knowledge of self is deeper than our knowledge of self. This relationship with oneself is so important. You could have ultimately weak-minded, physically weak, weakness across the board. You can have a group of people weaker across the board than another group of people. But if that weak-minded group of people knows themselves and knows you, and especially if they know you more than you know yourself, if all of those variables in that equation are active, that weaker group of people will be exponentially more powerful than the stronger group of people who do not know themselves. This is what we are dealing with today. Strength is attached to knowledge. Love is attached to knowledge. You cannot love yourself if you do not know yourself. You cannot build your strength if you do not know yourself. You cannot have a strong love if you do not have a strong knowledge of self. Love is not a feeling. Love is not a feeling. Let's put it this way. Love is as much of a feeling as the love they say you should feel when you're loving a cheeseburger at McDonald's. It's not real. Love is based on a knowingness. Knowledge is love. If you want to love yourself, you have to know yourself. If you want to love God, You have to know God. You have loved ones. Some of them you might not love because you know them. Some of them you do love because you know them. Family, you know them. You've had experiences. You know those experiences. You know the relationship within those experiences. That love is based on a knowledge. It's a knowingness. The actions of people, the actions of things, in our relationship with those people, in our relationship with those things, is how we misrepresent what love really is. Meaning you might think love is a feeling. Some people misrepresent lust for love. Commonalities many times get misrepresented as love. These things are not love. They're things. They're fillers that fill a space that has a sign on the door that says love. But if that room is filled with everything but love, you will not know love. Because at the end of the day, love is just another word. Like ascension, enlightenment, awakening. They're words that we use to see ourselves, to know ourselves. Here we are, back to knowledge, the knowingness. Love is a mirror. Ascension is a mirror. Awakening is a mirror. Enlightenment is a mirror. Fear is a mirror. You can only love as much as you know. You can only love as much as you know. If there is no knowledge, there is no love. If you do not know yourself, you cannot love yourself. The capacity to love outside of yourself is based upon the love you have for yourself. So if that's the case, the capacity to love yourself is based upon how much you know yourself. So we are dealing with a world of people who do not know themselves. And the side effect to that is that you do not love yourself. If you do not love yourself, how can you love someone else? So you have people, the majority of people in relationships, creating next generations of people under the idea, under the guise, under the word, in the room of love. But what are they filling that room with? If it's not love, they don't know themselves. What have they filled themselves with? These are the mind controls. We've been filled with capitalism, democracy, opulence, fillers, video games, stealing the time to know yourself, stealing the time to love yourself. Gathering the knowledge takes time. Take the time away from people, take the knowledge away. Take the knowledge away, take the love away. Take the love, the knowledge, and the time away, take the power away. The capacity to love a God is going to be maxed out at the capacity you have to love yourself. This goes for everything else. Loving your child is loving yourself. Loving your parents is loving yourself. Loving your partner is loving yourself. If you do not love yourself, you will not know how to love yourself. And if you do not know how to love yourself, you will attract partners who do not know how to love themselves and will not know how to love you. They will lack the capacity to love you because they do not know how to love themselves. This is the status quo of the mainstream demographic of the world. People buying into false religions, false ideas of themselves, false idols, false gods, stealing time, stealing energy, stealing focus, siphoning energy, siphoning time, separating people from themselves. Take the romanticism out of it, take the definitions out of that, pulling people away from themselves. So separate from themselves, so empty, what do we have to fill ourselves with? Something that feels like love. Something that fills that space. This system knows this. So it bases its entire system off of space fillers. We've emptied them out. We've beat them down. We've sucked the life out of them. But you can't leave them empty. You can't leave them starving. They will revolt. You have to give them something. This is your bread and circus. This is your fake democracy, your fake capitalism. Make it seem bigger. Make it seem more right. Insert in socialism. Compare the two. Make one a bad guy, make one a good guy. Build these teams. These teams will be adopted as who and what they are. The knowledge of self. Your conservative perspective of yourself is a knowledge you have of yourself. Your democratic version of yourself is a knowledge that you have of yourself. Since you do not have a knowledge of self, these are the space fillers that fill that space. Love will not be the only thing attached to these artificial versions of oneself. Truth will be attached to these artificial versions of oneself. Democrats in the supposed new world are looking at people who speak truth, which is information that counteracts the mind control of their systems. People see that, and since their only knowledge of themselves is based upon a political party, they project that perspective onto you to kill truth, because it's all one system, not knowing of their own mind controls, project onto you that you are part of a political party because you share a particular perspective, which is information, which is truth. But since their only knowledge of themselves is based upon a political party, that projection onto you is now you are a conservative because other conservatives say that same information. Did the conservative party invent that perspective? Did they create that channel of information themselves? Did all of this information come from? No. But since people are so limited in their relationship with themselves, in their understanding of this storyline outside of politics, they know nothing more than to project onto you something as simple. It's embarrassing. If I had said some of the shit that people say in relation to thinking that somebody else is a Republican because they share a particular truth, it's fucking embarrassing. It's sick. But it's the norm because people know nothing else. This is how far people can be pulled away from themselves, from the knowledge of self. So far. If they fill themselves so much, it's like a room. It's filled with garbage, with nonsense. They can't put anything else in there anymore. But the world continues to project onto them. So since they have nowhere to put that, move that energy, it needs to be projected onto something or someone else. This is why they have the two-party system. Because they could forever blame and fight each other in the ethers of the people, of the masses, and that artificial ether will fill their spaces with toxic gases. So you have people's rooms filled with gas, toxic gas. So much so that nothing else can enter that space. So they project. What do they project? They project onto whoever's closest to them, whoever's in their scope in that moment. They project onto them based upon the knowledge that they have. This is not limited to political parties. This has gone into the spiritual realms, New Age communities, religious circles, so-called conspiracy communities. If you don't think like this, if you don't talk about this, then you must be that. This happened to me on my channel when I would share information about the universe not being heliocentric. Sharing that information, knowing that it's a mind control, then shifting to the world of mind control and saying, well, if this exists strictly to mind control, knowing that it's to separate people from themselves, what other systems, what other tactics were used to shift, to take people away from themselves? Knowing that racism and a lack of understanding of who and what we are in reference to our ancestors, our relationships to the land, the resources, the earth, the sun, the moon, knowing that all those mind controls are based upon separation, for someone else to not have that knowledge, to not have the experience of separation, to still be filled with that synthetic garbage. This is why people are dismissing, discrediting your perspectives of your ancestors, is because they're still filled with that artificial bullshit. They're filled with artificial love. They're filled with an artificial knowledge of who and what they are. Some people's knowledge of who and what they are starts in 1492. Starts when their ancestors came over to this land. They can't go any further than that because they are scared to fucking death. They are scared shitless to go beyond that because they don't know what's over that ledge. To stay as far away from that knowledge, to stay as far away from that understanding, that timeline, that information, that responsibility, to stay as far away from that shit as possible, they will project onto you as if you have a problem. So bringing up that information, speaking on those perspectives, is a threat to their love, fake love that they have for themselves. Fake love in reference to the shit that they filled their room with. So you speaking from a deeper layer of knowledge of self, a timeline that goes beyond their comfort level, is a threat to them, is a threat to their knowledge of self, is a threat to their creature comforts, is a threat across the board. And by you knowing, loving yourself, by you going there, it's a threat to their artificial love that they have for themselves. And since artificial love is still one of the main pillars holding this garbage ass system afloat, they allow it to exist in their world, to mind control themselves, to have an artificial version of moving forward, of evolving, elevating their consciousness, keeping their focus on that at your expense. This is your New Age community. This is your let it go. Let's move on. We're all human. This is that mindset. We can't talk about race. We're all one. We're all human. Let's move forward. What about the aliens? Let's not be bogged down by all of that. Let's focus on the fact that we are all being attacked right now. It's not just your people who are starving and being attacked. It's all of us now. Well, your now is different than our now. Our now includes our ancestors. You do not want to include the now of your ancestors because your now that includes your ancestors is too heavy for your frail ass pillars to hold up. For those synthetic foundations, that information, that perspective is too heavy for that weak ass foundation that you have cemented into your world and are trying to cement into our world. We are not falling for that busted ass, broken, fake ass version of what the world mind should be like. This we're all one, we're all human. That's it. No, that is your safety net. That is your artificial love of yourself. This is why they bring domesticated animals into the discussion. Because dogs and cats, specifically dogs, have a sense of unconditional love. So they surround themselves with beings who have an attachment, a connection to a real love. And since they have a love for a being that has genuine, organic love up to the degree of their consciousness, since they are surrounded and connected with that being, it pawns off the illusion of having that love being a part of them. If they are the leaders, the owners, the rulers of beings who express an unconditional love, then they must have love with them. It's an illusion. It has nothing to do with the actual person. The love that they have between that kind of being and a dog, that kind of love is at the same level of love based upon the definition that a teenager has on what love is. There's no knowledge there. It's artificial. It might feel a certain way, but it's not it. So these are those gap fillers. These gap fillers are part of the mind control. Without the gap fillers, people will see that they are empty. If their rooms are filled with synthetic nonsense that pawns off the illusion of love, they will not be able to see that they are empty. They will not be able to see that they have a lack of knowledge of themselves. If they can't see that they have a lack of knowledge of themselves, they can't see that they have a lack of love for themselves. So when they look in that room, they see a room full of everything that they love, but it's artificial. Projection also fills that room. It defends that room and fills that room. They will project onto you to stay away. Do not look in my room. Do not make me look in my room. I will project onto you to keep that from happening. Emptied out partners who choose to be together also choose to not expose, to not shine a light on each other's rooms. We will focus on what we are building. Let's build outside of our room. So they separate the love of self from the love that they have with each other. And they build another room. This is that world, their house, their white picket fence, their golden retriever, their kids, their jobs, their cars, their vacations. These are fillers. They build a whole nother room and say, this is our love. And the system acts as if it doesn't know why. There's a 55, 60+% divorce rate. That's a pandemic. How can that not be seen as a huge issue? It's because that broken relationship that people have with themselves, with each other, is a benefit to the system to generate codependency. Because when people fall out of love with each other, they fall back into love with an artificial version of themselves through systems that are promoted by the mind control system. This artificial love is built to fail, just as this artificial system is built to lift you up to certain degrees in ways that are meant to fall. Because this system will make its profit off of building you up and the energy it takes for you to fall from where you've been up down to back where you are right now. Building you up, catching you when you fall, having you invest back into that system. Build another room. Building another house with another relationship is just like another piece on the Monopoly board. You're investing more and more, building more infrastructure on that board. And it's a monopoly. It's a monopoly because you have no knowledge of self. And you're attempting to fill that house, your house, you as the house. You're attempting to fill that with pieces on the board. This is how that system benefits from your lack of knowledge of self, from your lack of love for yourself, from your lack of critical knowledge of each other. You cannot build outside of the monopoly board unless you know that there is an outside of the monopoly board. You cannot know that there's an outside of the monopoly board if you do not know that you exist outside of that monopoly board, which is why they maintain all of these systems to keep you vested in that world of monopoly, monopolizing your knowledge, your love, your relationships, your history. This keeps you away from knowing yourself, keeps you away from loving yourself. You do not have those two variables, you will not be able to create a powerful, loving, knowledgeable relationship with anybody else to generate future generations who will carry that knowledge, carry that love into the future. So this is why it's a benefit to have two partially self-loving people build houses, structures on that board and fill it with the gap fillers provided by that system. Filling your personal relationships with other people, with yourself, filling it with stuff, filling it with emptiness, filling emptiness with shoes, clothes, cars, partners, kids, alcohol, drugs, plastic surgery, sex, food, porn, dopamine. It's dopamine. They've gotten into the chemistry of your mind. If aspartame is fake sugar, dopamine is fake love. This aspartame love is in everything. It's the high fructose corn syrup of your reality. And it's burning the hell out of your neurons. You're not firing at the capacity that you're capable of. You're firing, your brain chemistry is only firing to a certain degree. These artificial fillers become your definition of love. Just as this artificial definition called humanity, the human, becomes your artificial definition of yourself, to hide you from yourself. People live their entire lives thinking lust is what fills the space for love until knowledge of oneself forces it out. People fill their rooms with lust. These are your dopamine drips from porn, from broken relationships. Right now, they can't do it with just lust anymore. Now they have to go deeper into how one sees themselves. So they're attacking your gender. They're attacking your relationship with yourself. This is what this LGBTQ, the weaponizing of that system is. It's to separate you from yourself, to generate another house to fill garbage with, to confuse. The majority of the people in the world right now are having difficulty with transitioning from lust to love. Now you have people having difficulty with transitioning from man to woman, woman to man, before they even get to love, before they even get to love themselves. They're having difficulty with knowing themselves. That difficulty, that separation, that gap is profitable. How is that gap being filled? They're filling it with movements, with this idea that politics is involved in this. Politics getting involved in the gender discussion that they generated is another way to make it seem more organic, make it seem more real, make it seem like it's on your side, to build up the superhero. And the villain becomes whoever is not on their side. So just as lust fills the space for love in that discussion, in the gender discussion, when you have politics involved, politics fills that room, takes that place of love, because politics is power. Love is power. So power, the power of a movement, the power of owning oneself. I am beyond this realm. I am not a man. I am a woman. And you better fucking say it. Say it. Okay, you're a woman. Don't laugh after you say it. You say it and you hold a straight face. Why is your power based upon somebody else's acknowledgement? It's not a power. It's a weakness. This is how this system generates weak people. Externalizing them, forcing them to externalize their power on the approval of somebody else. You better approve of my pronouns. I don't give a fuck about you. Why should I give a fuck about you and how you see yourself? That's not my responsibility. One thing these people don't want to talk about is that a large part of their movement is based upon lust. It's not love. They're not loving themselves for finding themselves. People don't know themselves, largely. To the extent that a lot of these people are loving themselves is not love. It's lust. So just as somebody can lust over somebody else, these individuals can lust after the idea of themselves being something else. This is not for everybody, but this is very much a part of that storyline. The majority of people in the world do not know. They do not have a depth of a definition of love. They do not know themselves enough to love themselves enough. This is where the majority of people in that movement are coming from. They do not have a love for what the world tells them they are. So they have to fill that space with something new. And since it's new and they're creating it in the moment, it pawns off the illusion of love. It's not. It's lust wearing a dress. This is why they can't hide it when they promote themselves. They have strippers in elementary schools, part of their community, half naked walking down the street. It's lust. The celebration of that kind of love is not love. It's lust. Lust fills a room faster than love because lust doesn't need knowledge. This is why after relationships, people who are broken feel empty, and they need to fill that empty space with what? They fill it with lust. They find another partner immediately, as quickly as possible. And that room is filled, at least for the moment, which is all they need because, once again, it's about the drip, that dopamine. It's liquid love, high fructose love. This is what this lust is. This is what these gap fillers are. High fructose love. It's just lust. It's just going to fatten you up and fill you with garbage. You're not going to build any muscle. You're not going to build any strength. But you'll be bigger. You'll feel bigger. You'll be less healthy. And this is all the system needs. People who feel bigger. Who look bigger. People do this with their body. They lust after themselves in the gym. Staring at the mirror. Trying to make their ass look bigger. Their arms, their back, their legs look bigger. Look at my fucking butt. Look at these calves. Bitch, look at this. You see, look. They can't help it. They fucking love the idea of themselves. Look at this shit. You can't get that muscle unless you work. Not everybody can do that. This is real shit. It maxes out. You can only go so far. You can lift all the weights in the world. You can be the strongest, physically strongest person in the world. It will never fill the space of somebody who doesn't know who they are. Drink all the protein, lift all the weights, get all the plastic surgery, get all the followers on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and all the other tubes that are out there. Fill that space with everything you think you need. It will never be enough. They're in the wrong house. And if you're in the right house, or you feel like you're in the right house, you're filling the wrong room. Until you get to that room, that knowledge of self room, until you fill that room with the knowledge of self, any spaces that you leave open in that room that means to be filled with your knowledge, with your love of self, until that space is filled, any gaps, any cavities in that room will be immediately filled. We can't leave empty spaces. It will be filled. Toxic gases will fill that space and pawn off the illusion of fullness until you fill it with knowledge that will eventually force those gases out of that room. And you will be able to breathe again with your actual lungs, not these artificial lungs that are out there. We are out here breathing artificial air with artificial lungs. These beliefs, this cosmology, this artificial love, this is all recycled air. High fructose air, recycled high fructose air, filling your fast food lungs with every breath, in, out, in, out, every moment. Having the opportunity with each breath. But it takes that breath work. People's time, people's clocks have been manipulated so much. We don't understand how to focus on our breath. We don't know what that means. So instead of taking deep breaths, conscious breath, instead of doing that, we just sit back and accept the lifestyle of toxic air. And can we live off of it? Yeah. Fast food, can we live off of that to a certain degree for a certain amount of time? Yes. Is it healthy? Absolutely not. Will it fill you up? For a moment. Filling themselves with partners, food, careers, fairy tale ideas of reality, illusory education, something. By the time people are able to see what has happened to them with their real eyes through all the toxic gases, most times it's too late. So they turn back around and continue on the path they've been on for so long. This is where the majority of people are right now. And when they come back, those definitions, those beliefs, those ideas of who they think they are get even stronger. They get heavier. They fill that space with even more clutter, gas, toxicity, empty with fullness.